Heave! Heave! Take it! Lucas! Take it! I got it! I got it! I got it! Oh, I don't got it! Alright guys, rugby runs deep in these veins, and today's guest is none other than Ireland and Leinster number 8, Caelan Doris. And more importantly, he's a Mayo man. So go check it out.
All right, Caelan Doris, welcome to the Dead Hedgehogs.
We're going to settle this argument now, Chris, once and for all. Keelan or Caelan, which is it? Because me and Chris here have been arguing about it for the last year.
Caelan, I've had all sort of things. I've had teachers who call me Caelan, Caelup, Keelan, everything. But it's Caelan, yeah.
It is Caelan. So Chris,
Chris,
right.
Chris is right.
I'm still going to. Don't be surprised if I still call you Keelan, because I've been calling you Keelan for.
No, we're used to every sort of name. Don't worry.
he just doesn't want to give it up. He just wants to. He wants to live in being wrong.
Many of them down there.
So welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you getting on?
Good. Yeah, as I'm saying there, just back to training this week after 5 weeks off. So back into the thick of things, and tough day done today, just back half an hour or so. So
was this the first session?
It was the first tough session. So we were in Tuesday for a bit of skills and a bit of running after, and then yesterday they ramped it up a bit more again, but today was the first proper blowout. And
this is with Leinster you're talking about?
With Leinster, yeah. So it's pre-season. Yeah. The season starts, I think, second last week, September. So there's another building up the fitness and getting the skills and fitness levels and everything back. Lots of gym work and stuff like that. And then we won pre-season game against Harlequins, who are the English champion. That's same weekend as the All-Ireland, the Friday night before, thankfully. So I'll make.
Thankful.
What are you going to do?
There was some game.
Oh my God! I watched it in Stockholm in Sweden. I was over doing a bit of filming with Mark Maloney, and that was an experience and a half. But to watch it there's no restrictions in Stockholm. There's no mass in pubs or anything like that. So it was like watching it in a pub years ago. Now, in saying that, I would have rather be in Croke Park, of course, with a full crowd. But what an achievement!
Unbelievable. Some comeback, if you look at it, like wasn't it?
Comeback, yeah.
It was outrageous.
And to be without Cillian O'Connor and Oisin Mullen as well, you know.
Yeah. Savage.
Would if you weren't playing rugby, would you be playing GAA?
Yeah, not at that level, I wouldn't say now, but yeah, I'd play with Niamh Porrick up until I went to Blackrock. I was a decent player, but I stopped playing 12, 13, so.
Okay.
Niamh Porrick's small enough club as well. It's the amalgamation of Lacken, Kilcummin, Ballycastle, Kilfine, so it's out in the sticks.
That's
as we said earlier on, what my actual it does something to me down around that area. It's I know a lot of people associate me with being over in Croagh and going around Westport. I lived in Westport, but there's something special for me about Downpatrick.
It's kind of, isn't it?
What's that?
It's kind of raw and untouched.
Yes. I always thought Westport. If you ever watch Game of Thrones, I always thought Westport was like the Knots Landing. Is it like the real posh area? And then you go
King's Landing.
Up King's Landing, yeah. And then you go to
the wildlings in the north, is it?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, you'd have a good night out there anyway with the wildlings.
Westport's a lovely spot as well. I was there 2 weeks ago. Played the golf course, went to the towers for a pint and a bit of grub. Lovely spot.
Very good. During the season, do you get down home much at all, or is it very much focused on being in Dublin, being available for training and stuff like that?
Yeah, be in Dublin the majority of the time, but they're pretty good with, like, we would never play 6 or 7 weekends on the bounce.
Yeah.
So you might play 3 or 4 games max probably in a row, and then you'd have a weekend off. So usually in those weekends I try and get back. Probably average about once a month overall, and then obviously Christmas and during the summer I get back for a longer time.
Very good.
I think Christmas when I saw you, wasn't it? I think I was down with the dog on the beach. You were wearing the hat, like I said.
Yeah. I try and get down as much as possible. You could see me in Lacken at any time. I try there. For some reason, I always go down in the back end, and more, and not as much in the summer. Don't know why. Just the way it works out.
Summertime's your Westport's your summertime beach.
Yeah, something like that.
You should see Lacken on a nice sunny day. Thousands of people down there.
Oh, stop!
It's different. Maybe that's why I like it, because anytime I've gone down, it's been literally like it's no one down there. So
yeah, it's always very quiet, even on a nice day. Like more cows than people back in the whole time.
It's very picturesque down there, especially down by the beach. It's unreal. All along there from Downpatrick all the way up to Lacken is lovely there. Yeah. For yourself, at the moment, you mentioned about going off to Blackrock at 12 or 13 years old, and into one of the traditional rugby schools. Like, was it from that moment you were like, where's it right? All your focus is on trying to be a professional rugby player.
No,
were you with
really.
Ballina before that, or what was your?
Yeah. I played Ballina from, I'd say, when I was probably 4 or 5. I started playing there, and yeah, it's great setup down there as well. The seniors have, well, the top team have become a senior team now over the last 2 years. They used to be a junior club, and they've gone up now the last 2.
I have a club. I'm not involved with the Ballina Rugby Club, but my daughter plays for the under 16 now. Actually, she's gone up to under 18, and also Aidan McNulty. He's been going out with my sister. He played with Ballina since he was 8 or 9 years of age. He's been out with my sister for the last 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
15 years anyway.
Savage setup, in fairness, and it's growing as well. But yeah, no, when I went to Blackrock, my brother was 2 years above me. So the two of us, he moved from King's Hospital, which is another boarding school just outside Dublin. He moved to Blackrock into 3rd year, and I moved in 1st year. And rugby wasn't the main focus. He'd always wanted to go to boarding school, and I kind of followed in his footsteps a bit. I was on the Bs in 1st year and enjoyed it, but it was like, I think it was compulsory in 1st year, so there was 200 in my year and 8 teams or something. So it was crazy amount of turning out for training every day. But as it was only probably 4th year, 5th year when I actually kind of thought there could be a career in this for me, and knew the pathway then from sub-academy, academy, all that.
What age would that be? What age would that be?
So 16, probably 15, 16, 17.
Okay.
That to me would be a little bit late in deciding that you were going to go full tilt at it. Would I be right? Or
yes, some guys are probably from, I don't know, 12 or 13, but I was just playing it for the crack. Which most people are doing, I suppose, as well. But I wasn't I would have never watched too much rugby when I was younger and stuff like that. We didn't have Sky back home. But I was always number one. In Lacken, I played soccer, Gaelic, rugby, but rugby was always number one. And then it obviously got ramped up as I went to Blackrock. But later in the later years, where I kind of thought I'm going to have a crack at this for a career.
And it seems to have progressed very quickly over the last couple of years. Like you've seemed to run from the academy straight into the seniors, into the Ireland setup very quickly. Does it feel like that to you?
Kind of, yeah. If I look back now, it does. But at the time, there's so many little steps. So you come out of school, whatever, 18, you go into the sub-academy, and you're playing Ireland 20s as well, hopefully that year. And then you're into the academy. I did a year in the academy. You play a bit of Leinster A. Then you get your first cap. And so it snowballs from there a little bit. But at the same time, there's so many different steps that it feels like you're always targeting the next thing and the next thing. But looking back now, it was pretty quick. Like I only did the 1 year in the academy, which has become more common now. A lot of people are jumping through up to the seniors straight away, the way we have it. But it was quick. But yeah, great journey so far.
Physically, that's a quick turnaround, because the difference between what age are you then, 19, 20, to go up and play in seniors, that's a big leap. Even in Gaelic football, that would be a massive leap.
Yeah, I was actually my heaviest back in 5th or 6th year. I think I was 112 or 113 back then. Used to have a roll of Jaffa cake every day, so it probably wasn't the best weight. But I'm down to
obviously your diet has to obviously change when you go into that league of men.
Yeah. I was just like, my eyes were set on being as heavy as I could be. I was just thinking the heavier the better, but the reality is you need to move all that weight as well. So fitness wise, it's not the easiest. Like there's so many demands fitness wise in the game these days that you want to be heavy, you want to be strong, powerful, but you need to be fit as well. So it's finding that balance. I think it takes a few years for everyone to find their optimal weight, but I'm getting there now, I think.
Right.
Anyway.
That's a thing that's happened with rugby. I mean, if you were to go back 20 or 30 years ago, the bigger you were, the better you were.
Sucking pints by like they're going out of fashion.
Yeah. and now it's the quickness of the game. Obviously, it's not a game for soft lads either, but
it goes through phases. Kind of like, I remember probably late 2000s, around the 2007 World Cup, it was all about just being as big as you can, massive packs coming up against the likes of South Africa. England were huge back then, whereas now they're looking for leaner athletes, a bit more speed and stamina and stuff like that. So yeah, it kind of goes through phases a bit, but the way we try and play anyway, and the training we do suits being a little bit lighter probably.
I suppose when you look at Ireland's front pack and their forwards at the moment, there's a lot of, as you said, like James Ryan and other players, lean, tall, strong, and just he's quick, and it's that the pace of the game is almost like it's gone up a notch. So it goes into it actually plays into your strengths or James Ryan's strengths or those,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you got the strength and the fitness, the extra few kilos you probably don't really need them.
Yeah. For yourself, who was when you were starting to take those steps in, who was your biggest inspirations and who was your biggest help out of the Leinster squad at the time?
To be fair, they were all actually dead on. All the back rows would be a pretty close-knit group and help each other out a lot. Jamie Heaslip was injured when I first came in, so he would have been knocking around the gym a fair bit. Then like the likes of Josh van der Fleer, such a sound lad, always checking up on you with your detail, making sure you have everything, that sort of stuff. In terms of inspiration, Jamie Heaslip was obviously the Irish number 8 for 10 plus years as I was growing up. So I was always a big fan of him. Abroad then, the likes of Kieran Reid, I would have watched of other back rows like Pocock, different players like that. But you kind of, these days as well, what the coaches push these days is not just to watch rugby as a fan anymore as much, but try and pick up little things here and there from other and try and take them into your game then as well.
You mentioned there some of the biggest names in Irish rugby and rugby in general. How do you able to keep yourself grounded when you're suddenly put in the same gym, same training, same team as the likes of Jamie Heaslip or Van der Fleer?
Yeah, it's funny, like you are kind of thrown in a little bit because the academy now train with the seniors pretty much full time. You're kind of like, Jesus, what the fuck am I doing here? But I don't know, like you realize that they're all down to earth, sound lads. They're well known because they're good at rugby, not because they're anything special other than that necessarily. But no, they're all sound lads, and at that stage, you're extremely motivated to try and do your best in training and get to the ultimate goal at that stage is getting your first Leinster cap. So you're pretty firmly set on doing that, and you can't be too big for your boots in an environment like that where there's whatever 40, 50 lads. You're down. If you're a bit of a dickhead, like someone's going to say it to you, or you're going to get shot down. So like, there's no goes really in the group, where everyone's pretty down to earth sound lads.
You're the first rugby star and player that we've had on the Dead Hedgehogs podcast, and I do know from dealing with rugby players and hanging out with rugby players the odd time, that there is a like a brotherhood, and it's a really tight, even in Ballina club that you originated from, or from the area that you
Is it a
from.
cult? Is it a cult?
There is from in an early age, it's like a unit, you know. It really is a tight thing, and everyone seems to look after themselves, even when there's arguments on the pitch. Like, you can tell, like, everyone looks out for each other.
I think big bonds are built through going to tough places, whether being training or matches or whatever. The nature of rugby, how physical it is and how demanding it is fitness wise, probably bring you closer together as well. You know that you're working hard for everyone around you and they're doing the same for you. So it kind of builds a special friendship, and the change room as well is a special place after a game, when you know you and everyone else around you has left everything out in the pitch and you're sharing a few drinks together or whatever after a bigger game. But it definitely builds special friendships.
I always felt as well that it gives you a great discipline. There's a great discipline to rugby players. I know that
I always, you almost link rugby and boxing with that type of discipline, as you they go through that similar type of hardship that most sports can't really endure.
There's probably a lot of values that will hopefully stand to me after rugby as well that you take from this. But I've got a book here, Jocko Willink. It's actually underneath my phone. My phone is discipline equals freedom. So that's a good quote for you.
Brilliant.
That's excellent.
Sorry,
go
Chris,
ahead.
I just bring up a point, and it's probably a bit early to bring this up. The aftermath, and I know you're many years away from that. The after rugby, I do know that in the last year or two, or maybe more so 2 or 3 years ago, there was a thing about, what do you like? Is there a backup for rugby players that retire, and suddenly they're in that unit of that brotherhood and that togetherness with their teammates, and suddenly then they don't have that anymore. And for some people, it seems to hit them hard.
Definitely.
So what can be done to make that easier on players that retire?
It's tough on rugby players in Ireland, who are kind of our union, I guess, or they look after us, and that more so the off the field sort of stuff. And they're pushing sort of that. They work a lot with players through that transition, but they also, for younger guys like myself, they push keeping stuff off, keeping a bit of balance, and making sure you have stuff off the pitch as well, and not. They kind of say you could get injured this year, tomorrow, whatever it could be. It could be very soon, or it could be over. So making sure you've got a bit of a plan, and making sure you're always doing stuff off the pitch. So they'd encourage lads to do undergrads and masters and a bit of work experience on days off and things like that. So it's not, you don't turn 32 all of a sudden your career's over and you've got absolutely nothing. They always say to keep something ticking over, so that definitely helps. And then probably staying in touch with the lads as well is going to be beneficial too. But it's definitely from being on a schedule every day for 10 years and seeing the same lads, seeing the same face, doing the same training, always having a match on the weekend to build up to. The lack of that is definitely something needs to be filled there. So it's definitely a tricky one, especially for lads having to retire early through injury and stuff like that. But
see, with the difference between, in my opinion, the difference between rugby and GAA, for example, the GAA players go back to their
normal day job.
Their day job, their communities. They're with the same people that they've been around even when they were playing for intercounty.
Plus, you've also got, say, if you took football or soccer into it, they've also been professionalized for the guts of 100 years.
Yeah.
So there's an experience there where, do this, do that. And obviously the money is colossal now, but they've
lying the couch.
Rugby's professionalized 25 years. It's actually not that long. So you're seeing the first of the retirees that might have made that much money. The ones that are struggling hard, I'd say, even getting into just regular work.
But rugby is capped, isn't it? There's a cap on rugby. It's not like soccer.
Salary cap.
Yeah. Like the salaries are absolutely nothing compared to soccer. Like.
Yeah.
So
but again,
really
I suppose
you have to be doing something on the side for afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. It must be tough as well for lads who are on pretty good money towards the end of their career, and then they go back to sort of square one in a way, trying to build into a different domain, starting on smaller cash again. That must be a strange transition too.
Of course.
Yeah.
But sure,
we're already talking about retiring, and you're
that's because me and you were dreaming of retiring as soon as possible. We're not even playing rugby. But for yourself at the moment, Caelan, obviously you're in quite a talented group in the Irish setup at the moment. A lot of a lot of changes in the camp itself. You've seen a lot of experienced players starting to retire and come away from the camp themselves. What's the feeling amongst the camp at the moment?
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time. I missed the Six Nations through injury, so I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, we were so disappointed to see that from being a Mayo man.
Cheers, appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, then I was back in for the 2 summer games, so we had 2 or 3 weeks in camp then. And it's such an enjoyable environment to be in with the new coaches, Andy Farrell, Mike Cash, John Fogarty, and Paul O'Connell as well as a newer addition. And there's a good mix in there, working very well. A lot of young players coming up, but I think we stay in Carton House and train in the HBC in Blanchardstown.
Yeah.
So we travel ourselves, whatever, it's 20 minutes in. And you've got your work day then, and then when you're back in Carton House, you can relax a bit more, and there's whatever, table tennis, darts, TVs, obviously all that sort of stuff. So it reminds me actually of Borden and Blackrock a little bit. Just hang around with lads, putting a few quid on darts or table tennis or whatever. Robin. But yeah, no, it's a class environment. And yeah, it's nice having the mix between, like, Leinster's obviously savage as well. So it's nice having a bit of variety there between the two of them.
Yeah. You were talking about the academy players playing with the senior team. Is that the general rule for rugby? Do you think that Munster are kind of doing the same thing and having their academies come into the first team as early as possible?
Yeah, I think it's definitely becoming more common. I think a few years back, maybe 2012 or so, or 2013, I think it was less common, and there might only be 1 or 2 out of the 20 academy lads pulled up if there was someone in their position injured, something like that. But yeah, nowadays they try and throw them in as early as possible and get them up to speed, because definitely the way we train prepares you for Pro 14, Pro 16 this year, or URC I think it's called this year. But the level of training, obviously the standard with so many internationals in the squad, you need that, and you need as much time as possible and as much exposure as early as possible to standard. So
that's tough on a young body though, no matter how big you are. I know you're 6'4" and you're 16 what stone?
17 after the break, I'd say.
17 stone. No matter how, when you're a young body, maybe I'm wrong. Even for GAA player to get thrown in that young, that has to take a toll eventually. Or do you think that you've trained correctly for taking them hits?
Yeah, well, we actually do very little contact training day to day. Yeah, so it's mostly sort of, it might be shoulder on, or even sometimes you might do touch and then build up into shoulder on. but it's very rarely full on live tackle.
Okay.
Might do a little bit more in preseason, but as the matches come around, if you're beating the shit out of each other during the week, you're going to be fairly wrecked come the weekend. So you might have a few windows here and there, but no, it's mainly non-contact stuff. Gets you running fit anyway.
I suppose the other side of it is even if you take the Mayo team right now, young players, it's like, what did Alex Ferguson say years ago? They have no fear, and he wanted players with no fear. So you've got young players that, like, you see in the Mayo squad now, littered with quick, hungry young players that want to break lines, and rugby's very much the same thing if you could get that in there.
Yeah, you've got young guys coming up with a lot of confidence and willing to try risks. And then you've got the older, more experienced lads with a bit of wisdom, sort of reining them back a little bit when needs be.
Remember, they might be a little bit afraid to put their head in where they put their head in before.
That makes a lot. Yeah, that's the wisdom you want in the forwards anyway.
Explain your number 8. So to anyone that doesn't know the positions of rugby, what's your job?
Number 8 is the back row. So best way to describe it in the scrum is you've got the front row, which is the 2 props and the hooker in the middle. Chris, you could make a good front row someday, maybe if you haven't been already.
I'm trying not to be a front rower anymore. I'm trying to get leaner, man.
Then he wants to be the back row.
Yeah, that's it.
The 2 second rows, who are generally the tall lads in behind them. Stick you in there, Stephen, I'd say. And then you've got the 3 back row in behind, the flankers on either side, and the number 8 at the back. So back rows, their big things would be carrying, tackling, it's kind of a bit of a hybrid position in a way. You've got to be able to do a lot of stuff. Turnovers would be do, but you need to have decent skills as well, and be pretty fit. So it's a pretty important position. 9 and 10 are kind of the 2 crucial playmakers. The thing about rugby is every position has different demands and different requirements. So you need every position, but for me, I'm going to say back row is one of the more important ones.
Of course, and believe me, when we're promoting this podcast, we'll make sure that's the prerogative.
the vital cog in the wheel.
The only cog in the wheel.
One thing you mentioned was that you got injured earlier on in the year, and it's something that's very much come to the fore about getting concussion and head injuries. Obviously, don't want to go into your complete medical history here or anything like that, but it is obviously very high profile because it was just before the first game of the Six Nations, which is sick, an absolute sickener. At the time, it was in a training match, wasn't it, that you got hurt?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was pretty unfortunate time, and definitely, and I was obviously very disappointed to miss out on the whole Six Nations. I wasn't sure how long it would be at the time, but so I'd got a bit of a small knock against Munster, and had gone through the protocols and was fine after that. And then we had a training match against Ulster and got another knock in that. So the worry was that my threshold had lowered a little bit. They say the more concussions you have, the easier it is to get even more. So a bit of there then. And I'd had, I don't know if you remember, if you're watching my debut, which was the first game of the Six Nations the year before, 2020. I was put to sleep after about 4 minutes. So I had a bad enough one then, and I'd had another one that season. So there was 2 then as well. So just with the history of those 2 and me still being pretty young, I'm pretty thankful that the medical staff were very comprehensive in how they looked after me and got checked out as fully as possible, and they sort of left no stone unturned in that. So I left camp, I think it was maybe a Saturday or Sunday it was, and then by the Monday I'd seen one neurologist already. I was at Antry for different physical tests. I went over to Birmingham to see another specialist who's world renowned. He's one of the best in the game. Had MRIs done, all sorts of tests, and thankfully everything was clear. So it's nice having that confidence now. The reason I was sort of out for longer than I wanted was what they say is to bring that threshold back up.
Yes.
Time off is one thing, and you've got things like neck strength. So with concussions, it's actually the brain rattling around inside your head.
Yeah.
So with the stronger neck, obviously there's less head movement and hence less brain movement as well. And then I also did a sort of return to contact exposure where we sort of went from 60% and gradually increased it back up to full contact. So
and how long did that take?
We did that over about 15 sessions, 4 or 5 weeks, I'd say. It was tied into tackle technique as well, which is another big component of preventing them. So I ended up being out for, I think it was almost 3 months. I was supposed to be back after maybe 10 weeks or so. I was supposed to play Munster, and then in the captain's run, which is the last session, just to sort of jog out, going through the moves and making sure you're right the day before the game, I ended up doing my calf. So that was, it was a bit of a nightmare, but yeah, another 3 weeks anyway till I ended up playing. But yeah, no, it's good to be back, and hopefully there'll be less injuries and less games missed this season.
Yeah, I suppose when something like that is, and it's a head injury and you've had a couple before, there's obviously, I'm sure in the back of your mind, there's a little freak out moment as well, but you're obviously with a very specialist team of doctors that you can go to as well.
Yeah. No, the way I was looked after was top class. So all the people got checked on all fronts, from physical to obviously the scans to different cognitive tests, got everything done. So it's nice as well going forward. If ever there's worries again in the future, I've got all these baselines across the board and everything. Yeah. So I can always come back and compare. So it's nice having those done. The coaches as well were very good with it, very understanding, and sort of willing to learn and trying to learn from this and how they can make it easier and better for players going forward as well. So sure. It was great.
You also mentioned about changing your tackle technique and maybe making changes to that. Can you talk us through how you're looking at, without giving too much away, but like where maybe your flaw was in your tackle technique that might give you more risk, and how you're looking at changing it?
On that note, Chris, I'd love to think that some of the England coaching staff and the French coaching staff and the Munster coaching staff,
they're all watching.
Will be watching this podcast.
What else would they be doing?
We're going to put over in France watching this.
Yeah. They're gonna. I'm gonna dub myself over in French and everything for them.
Sorry about the interruption.
Tackle tech. So it's kind of my work on anyway. It was about being square and a little bit lower. So it was to prevent sort of neck movement basically, and my head taking the hit first of all. So it's just about the angle of entry into the contact was my big thing, along with the angle of my torso sort of not being too high. It's all around sort of trying to limit neck movement and protect the head as well. So it's nothing that might be hard to picture. It's nothing too novel, but yeah, it's
for a tall fella would be a difficult thing to change.
Yeah. We had our contact skills coach has actually moved on this year, but he did a lot of work with us throughout that last year. And the way the game's going as well, higher tackles are being penalised more and more. So they say sort of the nipple line and down is what you get away.
That's
if you go too low, then you could be connecting head on knees and all sorts of stuff. So
it's a really fine line between getting it right and getting it very wrong.
exactly. Yeah.
It's
probably
a bit like John Small's tackled an Owen McLaughlin last weekend.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It was very
I'm sure he didn't mean to go for the head, but he definitely meant to
Yeah.
make contact.
Well, he went in to do him. No, like anyone that's argued, we had this argument yesterday, where Peter was like, "No, I don't think he went to hurt him." I was like, "He fucking went to hurt him." There's a fucking guarantee.
Bit of bite in those games, isn't there?
Yeah, stop. Like, would you, obviously with yourself and playing with Leinster and being from Connacht, do you think? How do you think the other provinces are shaping up? Because Leinster have had quite a pronounced period of dominance over the last couple of years.
I think all the provinces are doing pretty well. Munster have new coaches the last couple of years. Their attack's looking quite a bit better. They've got some new signings as well, and like we do, some young guys coming up too. So I think they're going to be back up in the mix again next year. This season coming. Up north, they've been thereabouts as well for the last few years. And out west, it'll be interesting to see. I have a good few friends out there from my 20s and stuff. One of my good mates from school was actually out there the last 2 or 3 years. He's gone now, unfortunately. But it's good setup down there and good coaches and stuff like that. So they'll be in the mix as well. There's massive competition across the 4 provinces, really.
Yeah,
that's great for all the provinces, all the teams to have that competition.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously that benefits the national team as well. So the more competition, the better.
Is the rivalry as bad as they say with Munster and Leinster? You've mentioned a lot of Munster games, so is there that rivalry, a beautiful rivalry, as I call it?
Yeah, it's funny. You hate the team more than the people on the team. Like when we're in camp together, everyone mixes and gets on great. But the weeks we're playing into pros, even with Ulster and Connacht, but probably even a bit more so Munster, there is an extra bite and extra intensity to the sessions, and even in the meetings, probably a bit more analysis and things like that. But those games there's always a fair bit of bite in them.
Yeah,
they have done so good for Irish rugby in Europe, in the club, and then obviously producing the players that have made the Irish team and made the Irish team one of the top teams in the world. Just to keep that up. I'd love to see Connacht being up on that standard. They were getting there, and next thing just seemed to drop back a little.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because they have a lot of good players as well. I'll give Jack Ainger a shout out coming up in the front row. Be interesting how it goes this year.
Excellent.
When does the season start properly?
The second last weekend in September, I think it is.
Okay, that's for the clubs.
Yeah, that's for clubs, and then the internationals. I think the first game with Ireland is end of October over in Las Vegas against America.
Okay, against America, and your plan is to be there, right?
That would be cool and be involved in.
Yeah.
Hit up the strip after.
Dead right.
I might be there. You might be passing by, and I might be standing there again.
Yeah. But
after that, then it goes. I think Japan, New Zealand, Argentina, maybe. So there's 4 big games there in November, which would be class to be a part of.
When you're in these countries, do you get to see, like, apart from the rugby, do you get to see anything of these countries, or is it all tunnel vision?
You get a fair bit. You always have at least one day off during the week, so you'd be able to do a bit of touring anyway. COVID's been around for more than half my career now, especially with Ireland, so I haven't experienced too much touring yet. But like when all these games bar the USA are at home, they'll be played in the Aviva. But when you go on a summer tour, I think there's usually a few days off, and there's always a few events and activities planned throughout the break, and then a few nights out as well, of course. So they're supposed to be crack.
Water and tea, of course.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that question. Are you allowed to let your hair down in rugby for when you're on tour?
Yeah, there's no ban. It's kind of fairly up to yourselves to a certain extent. I mean, like, it's obviously a professional game and lads want to put their best foot forward and play well and perform well during the week. So you couldn't be rocking up to training hungover. But if you've had a big win, you're definitely allowed a few pints.
I'm liking rugby more and more.
But you know, I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy because if you've had a big win and you don't say go for a couple of pints or let the hair down a bit, then trying to get to sleep that night would be a fucking nightmare. You know, you want to go out and have a bit of a celebration, feel like you've put it's right, that's done, that day's done, tomorrow's going to be a fresh start or whatever. Like,
yeah, it's also like we were talking about earlier, the bonds you build, having a few pints and the crack you have over that definitely helps with that as well. So it's an important part of the game, I think. Obviously, you wouldn't be taking the piss, and it wouldn't be after every game, but only be the bigger games, really. I
know from being out with rugby lads and that they love the crack as well. But again, getting back to, they're very disciplined. They'll have the crack, but there's no mess and there's no animosity. Whatever is done on the pitch is done on the pitch, and it's just purely a bonding session.
Yeah, but no one's going to feckin' tackle them, like.
Well, that's true too. I mean, that's another thing.
No one's messing with those boys, like, so fuck it.
Having a few pints when you're 6'4", 6'5", or 6'6", and you're 17, 18, 19 stone.
Yeah,
you know, it'll take a fair night now to give you a rattle. I'm pretty sure.
You gotta be brave, like.
But
if just going back to I suppose you're part of a generation where like the likes of sports science and the right nutrition has really come to the fore for your career, where you've seen that previous generations, even the last couple of years, the changes have been enormous. How do you look at that compared to maybe even when Jamie Heaslip was in the squad? The changes are massive.
Yeah, like every meter we run these days are recorded. So we wear a GPS device, which has everything from accelerations, top speed, decelerations, total meters gained. It's got everything, contacts. So we've got that for every session. So you always have that to look back on. And that's sort of a good metric to see your fitness improving and see how you compare it to other people. Then in terms of the gym, we always record every weight we lift as well. Goes on to an app called Push on the iPad. And in the morning we'd do a sort of monitoring, which involves a couple of different stretches, a groin squeeze, a weigh in, different things like that. So yeah, there's so much information that we give and get. And yeah, it definitely helps with performance and knowing where you're at physically as well. So it's an important part of the game now.
Do you think that having such clean metrics and like being so statistic focused sometimes almost takes away a little from the just pure joy of playing rugby? Or, you know, do you ever feel that it can be a little bit too heavy, you know, on the statistical side of things, and sometimes you just want to go out and play? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, but I think we're pretty good in Leinster. Like the coaches, they would probably look at it and have a fair bit of emphasis on it. But like if someone's GPS stats are better than someone else, but they can't catch a ball or they're not performing well, then they're going to go for the other lad, you know. So it's sort of to back up. Rugby's obviously the primary, how you're playing and skills wise and all that sort of stuff is the primary focus, and then everything else is just to keep that improving. So yeah, it's definitely not the main thing. It's just sort of to supplement it, I suppose.
Right, you've got all your statistics. But on a different thing. You're 5 minutes to go. You're 75 minutes up against England for the Grand Slam. You're 15 points to 15. You know, heart means it has to mean an awful lot. That determination. You can throw all your statistics out the window if you don't have the heart in the game and the determination. Surely that overpowers every other statistic that'll be going.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
In 1 second, Caelan, I could throw you in, Stephen, against England, and there'd be fucking heart coming out of your ears. So I think that's an unfair comparison than anything.
There'll be what coming out of my ears?
I said there'd be heart coming out of your ears.
Oh,
fucking running through brick walls.
That is true, yeah.
The old enemy.
or anyone. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I always think these statistics, and even in GAA or soccer, there comes a point when all that's thrown out the window. We have to win the game. You know, does that go through your head? Does that, like, even though you're wrecked, you're broken, you're tired, you're exhausted, does it overpower everything and it pushes you on over the line?
Well, the statistics are only there to improve you as a player and as a team. So when you're in those moments, you're better equipped sort of to go and win the game. Like, they're sort of, the main thing they're used for is sort of comparing us to other players and seeing where we stand as a group, and then also year on year, so you can look back and see, okay, you had this top speed last year, you've improved by this much. But like, it's not, we don't sort of take the piss with them, and when it comes down to it in games, the rugby is the more important thing. And as you say, having the passion and the heart, that sort of is the priority.
Yeah,
I could often imagine saying, going into the situation that Stephen just described, you'd be singing rebel songs to yourself going into the pack, just going in for a scrum, going, "I got you back in tons, come on."
The back rows singing to the second rows, and the second rows singing to the front rows. Quartet.
or does crowd make a difference? Like, if the crowd is behind you, is it like a 16th player?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You appreciate it more and more now with COVID, having played in front of empty stadiums. Man, it gives you such a lift. Like, even the intensity in the whole place is just different. It's just way more of a spectacle, and I think it definitely does give you an extra, whatever, 5%, 10%. There's times when you're defending your own line and you can hear the whole ODS, the whole Viva shouting, and like, it definitely does give you a lift. It's obviously.
I love that. I like. Yeah. If you see me at an Irish rugby game or a Mayo or GAA game, like, you can be guaranteed that I'll be the loudest in the
About 10 points deep, let's say.
You'll be hearing from the sideline, like, "Caelan, push, you bastard!" And you'll be shouting back, "It's Caelan, you fucker, Stephen. It's Caelan."
Would you ever go up to?
What's that? Sorry.
Would you ever go up to a game? Have you been to many in the
I've been to a good few Ireland games now, and I've been the last club game or provincial game I was at was Ulster and Connacht 2-3 years ago. At Christmas, usually I try and get a few matches in Galway when I'm usually around Christmas, because I'm down there anyway, and there's some good provincial games on Stephen's Day or whatever,
Nice.
I myself haven't got to an Ireland game, but the reason for that is my first love would be Mayo GAA, and then it would be Irish rugby, and then Irish horses. I love horse racing as well.
Yeah.
Oh, love, especially Aidan O'Brien and Bulger when he's out. I love winning. I love winning in England. I love beating the English.
Yeah.
Even though I love, like, the English people are brilliant, but you'll often, anytime I mention a team that we need to beat, it's always England. So
yeah, I had a nice bet there. It's almost, Cheltenham the year before last, I think it was. I'd given up betting for a while, taking a break. So I got rid of my Paddy Power account, but a few of the lads every now and again, if they had an app they fancied. So I'd sent off whatever, 20 quid here and there. A lot, maybe 5-10 times, never got anything back. And then the first day, two lads were on to me and they just randomly picked out 4 horses. They did a bit of research themselves now, but just randomly, they didn't get a tip from anyone or anything, just picked them out anyway and sent them on. I only found this out after now. They were talking it up big time. They're like, oh yeah, everyone's tipping these class horses. There's 4 horses in the same day, so it was a 4-fold in the first day at Cheltenham. I revoluted one of the lads 50 quid and he sent me back 5 grand then later that day.
Oh,
Love
it.
I love
that.
that.
Comes in, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh,
yeah,
stop.
it was unbelievable.
The biggest profit I ever got was from a €3.50 bet. I don't even think I'm surprised I haven't mentioned this one on any of the podcasts. I had €203.50 in my betting account. I think it could have been Paddy Power. If not, it was Bet365. By the way, Bet365 charged you €20 to take out money. So I
scandalous.
Yeah, it's freaking ridiculous.
Cheeky.
Anyway, I had €203.50 in my account, and I thought to myself, it's Sunday. I'm always stuck in the bookie shop and in the pub watching the races. So I'm going to take out the €200. I'm going to put €3.50 on 6 horses. So it was 6 horses all at the Curragh. And so that I wouldn't be betting for the day. And I thought then I'll check in them later on. Of course, I done the bet, took out the €200, went into town. And of course, I ended up in the pub anyway. But the first race was happening, and I said, do you know what? I fancy that first horse, and I'm going to do it single. So I ran up to the bookmakers, stuck on €20. The first horse won. And I went down and I was having another pint with the lads. And then the second one was coming up again. And I said, geez, I like that one too. And I went up and I back that one single. And before long, I was just back to the same habit again. So I backed the third one again, €20. It might even be €50 this year because I had the 2 winners. So I was making money anyway. So I wasn't even really thinking about the accumulator at this point.
Yeah.
Then the fourth one came, and that was a short odds one. I remember Damson. It was Dave Watchman that trained it. He went in, I think he was 5 to 6 on. So that was, the next thing I thought to myself, this accumulator is starting to accumulate. So I rang my father, and it was the time that Aidan O'Brien and JB Smith had a 4-timer in the Curragh. And they had, so it was Coolmore that had 5 of the races. And One Cool Cat was in that as well. It's amazing I can actually remember the name of the horses. So I rang my father. I said, listen, I have 4 horses going on to, I think I have about €1,000 going on to this horse. And he said, that's brilliant, he said. So I went in and I watched it in the bookmakers. My father watched it at home. We had at the races with Sky, the works. And next thing, my horse won, and I think it was like 5 to 4 or something, or 6 to 4, and that was One Cool Cat. So that I had 2,500 up in the accumulator, so I didn't need to back any single anymore. So then I rang my father. He rang me, and he said, "Brilliant." He said, "That's unbelievable bet." I said, "Yeah." I said, "There's only one problem." I said, "It's all going on to the 6th one."
This before you could cash out.
No, there was no cash out. There was no cash out at the time.
What happened with the 6th one?
The 6th one, I couldn't watch in the bookmakers, so I got a lift out to my father, and I said I'll watch it with my father. And when it came to the race, Silk and Scarlet was my horse, and that was an Aidan O'Brien horse. It was a maiden. And then Dave Watchman had a horse in it as well, and both of them were like, one of them was like 5 to 4, the other one was 7 to 4, and they were fluttering up and down, and it was Chelsea Harborough, I think, was the David Watchman horse, but I know mine was definitely Silk and Scarlet, because the horse actually never won another race after this. But fuck me, I walked out and I couldn't watch it, and I walked up the road here, and I could hear my father roar, and I knew that the horse had won. And when my father roars, he roars.
Yeah. Oh,
I remember one of the lads in camp was telling us I think it was only a fiver he put on Rachel Blackmore. Don't know when. Sorry again.
And he's gone.
All right, you come back.
Sorry about that.
You're good, man.
You're all right,
there.
Chief, all right.
Meant to press hang
we'll
up,
just
I
edit it
pressed the
out.
wrong one. I was saying there, one of the lads in camp was telling us a similar story to that. He put a fiver on Rachel Blackmore. Can't remember where she was racing, but she had won her first, whatever, couple of races anyway, and she was on fire. So he decided to back her in every race from then on. And I think there must have been 6 or 7 horses she was on. Put a fiver on. She had won the first, whatever, 6 out of 7, or there was only one left anyway, and he had a cash out option of 10 grand, or else could let her roll for 50 grand. So he let her roll anyway, and the last one lost, he'd be fucking gutted. Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, it's a tough decision. 10 grand or 50 grand. You probably have to take your 10.
Can you press the video on that, Caelan?
Sorry, yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
Back. Yeah, jeez, you'd be gutted.
Oh,
Man.
It's
Yeah,
it's cruel, like, you know, but it's one of those, you're like, 10 grand's a bucket load. That's a fucking great win to come away with.
Yeah.
The 50 grand is big changing.
Essentially, like, almost life changing.
Yeah, not quite life changing, but it is fairly life changing.
It could be life changing, Chris. The thing is, 50,000 could set you up for life.
Could be. Yeah. They're the risks you take. So if you're ballsy enough to do it, you know.
Yeah.
Fair play. You gotta have balls to steal it.
Yeah, jeez. Where's Salmon? He's a married man now.
He's a married man.
He's a married man.
He's heading off to Mexico. The woman is from Mexico, so
Nice for some.
Isn't it just?
He's getting his sombrero from Lavins and Swinford. Straight out the door.
There's a few big Hardybuck fans in Leinster.
Oh, very good.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I picked up the nickname Salmon for a few weeks there last season.
I hope that's because you had a head injury. Sorry, Salmon.
People think Salmon's behind the door. Believe me.
Fuck it hell.
No,
get sharper.
The Vipers videos are gas these days as well. Jesus,
he's flying it.
We're in London.
Flying it. Yeah.
The one over in London was pure genius, and I actually think that was he was genuinely scared when they were taking him away, but he just kept going.
Yeah.
In the full costume and everything, it was gas.
When I was living in the last time I seen Chris Turdoff, who played the Viper, I was living at the foot of the Reek in Mersk, and he just happened to be walking the dog, but I was off on one of my runs, and no one has actually spoke to Chris, especially in person, in ages. So this was my perfect opportunity to say, "Oh, how are things, Chris?" You know, but my ego wouldn't allow me, because I knew I was clipping my time, and I was trying to beat this route. And when I got back to the house, I was like, "Sure, I could have bet that fucking any time."
Yeah.
You know? I was like, he goes, "How are things, Steve?" And I was like, "Oh, Chris, gotta keep going. Talk to you later." Gone. Of course, I never bump into him again.
Stuff. Like, one thing before we let you off, I want, like, obviously you're a rugby fan. I'm sure you watch plenty of rugby in between. With the Lions tour that has just gone through, there's been, I suppose it was a little bit underwhelming for the lads that were coming away from it. It was clearly a very physical tour that they had. What's your thoughts on it, and maybe some of the reaction to the tour? Yeah,
it was pretty tightly contested the whole way through. Easily could have gone either way, I think. I think as a spectacle, it probably wasn't the best. In terms of the standard of rugby, was pretty poor throughout. It's the way some teams are playing nowadays, kicking the ball a lot of focus on their scrum and line out and winning penalties that way. And the likes of South Africa obviously are very good at it. So it paid off for them, but for the spectators, it wasn't the prettiest. And especially with the lack of fans around the empty stadiums, it probably wasn't as good as it usually would be.
course.
But yeah, the Leinster
That's
boys
sure
and the
makes
Irish
more.
boys all went well. Good to see a lot of them being involved. Yeah, I was in Greece for 2 of them, so I was watching them on fairly dodgy streams, so I didn't get the best. But yeah, no, I was like, yeah, probably not the best overall, but be some crack to be on anyway, I'm sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's like to have that as a feather on your cap. I mean, that's
Yeah.
has to be an accolade that every rugby player, every Irish, English, Scottish, Welsh
Yeah.
rugby player,
Yeah.
you know, want.
It's a class concept as well. The idea of 4 nations coming together to play some of the
Best
biggest
in the world.
hemisphere teams. Yeah, class. Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's which is the next tour? Is it New Zealand?
Australia.
Next.
Australia. Yeah.
Wow.
Another 4 years down the line. Yeah.
A couple of things, Caelan, before we let you go. Firstly, any young fellows watching this and they're thinking about getting into rugby. I know this is Pete's French toast go-to question at the end, but seeing as he's not here, I'll ask, what advice could you give someone starting off, we'd say 10, 11, 12 years of age, although I hope that there's no 10 or 11, 12 years of age watching any of our content.
Yeah, a bit worrying if they're watching that, but yeah.
I think first of all, just don't switch to one sport too early. Keep it general. Play as many as you can for as long as you can. I think having sort of a general everything from the skill. There are some skills that cross over, but general fitness, hand-eye coordination. There's different skills that are transferable and that you learn across them all. So I'd say keep a general base and play as many as you're enjoying for as long as you can. If you want to go pro at some stage, the demands of one will take over. So more of your time is going to have to go into that. Everyone always talks about the enjoyment factor, and it's so true. You need to be enjoying it and loving it as you go. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it, but enjoyment's a massive factor in it. So if you're not enjoying it, there's no point in doing it early. And then I think I've read a few self-help books, the likes of Bounce from Matthew Syed. He talks about the 10,000 hour rule and the growth mindset, which is just about putting the hours in. So whether it's rugby or football or whatever, just having a ball around, kicking it against the wall, passing against the wall, just practice. Practice makes perfect, as they say, is very true. So I think especially the younger you are, but the whole way up really, it's going to stand to you. Just keeping a ball in your hand, always throwing it around, messing around with it the whole way up will pay off. So that would be probably the main one overall.
That's
great advice.
The fact that the one about if you're not enjoying it, it's not for you.
Yeah.
But that's not just for rugby. That's for every aspect of life.
Definitely, yeah. Like there's so many things to get involved in that if you're not enjoying one particular one, go try something else. And I'm sure there's something for everyone, as they say.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And the 10,000 hour rule, that I know that a lot of jiu-jitsu people go by that. You know, the longer you spend in jiu-jitsu, you know.
Yeah, or anything. Sales, it could be. It can be applied to literally anyone. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other question that I would like to ask is, where are you going to be on All Ireland final day, and by how many is Mayo going to win?
Great question. I'm going to try and get a ticket. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to try and get a ticket.
Yeah. I'd say the whole of Mayo is going to try and get a ticket.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I can get a ticket, I'll go to it, and if not, I'll probably come home for it, I reckon. And I actually bottled it there for the semi-final. I was in Mayo for the few days beforehand and drove up. I was supposed to play golf in Dublin for the few hours before it, and then the rain was shite, so we called the golf off. So I ended up watching it here in the apartment by myself. Yeah, shouting at the TV for the whole thing. Yeah, but I've never been thirstier for a pint in my life after. So my whole contact books here, and it was up front. Ended up getting a few anyway, but Mayo by 4.
Love it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who else is in the final. Caelan Doris has said Mayo's got to win. Love it.
Listen, dude, where can we find you for anyone that wants to follow you?
Instagram. So it's just my name, Caelan Doris, at Caelan Doris on Instagram. I have Twitter as well, but don't really use it. So
no, he
Instagram,
meant your address. Your actual home address.
Castellack. Do you want the air code as well?
Yeah.
And your bank details.
Excellent. Caelan, thanks a lot for coming on, mate.
For coming on.
Cheers. Pleasure, lads.
Absolutely.
Say hi to Salmon and Toasty.
I will. Mayo for Sam, lads.
That's
Absolutely.
it.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and a big thank you to Caelan Doris for joining us.
Look, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and if you could become a Patreon member, the link is in the description below. Big thanks to all our patrons, because they're the ones that are keeping the show on the road. If you can't become a Patreon member, please like and subscribe as a minimum. Rugby.
Touchdown!